You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey guys, this is Matt from One Hit Thunder. I wanted to give you a quick little sneak peek at some of the stuff that's happening at the One Hit Thunder Patreon page. You can check that out at patreon.com/OHT podcast. Every week, Chris and I put out a bonus episode, and here's a little snippet of the bonus episode we did for our Martika episode, where Chris and I rewatched the Mr. T Be Somebody or Be Somebody's Fool special. I'm only going to give you about 10 minutes of it. The full episode is like 30 or 40 minutes, so if you want to hear the full thing, go and check out our Patreon and make a donation, and you'll be able to listen to this and other weekly content.
Ready for a head-bangingly good time? Dive into the world of heavy metal with the Brutally Delicious podcast. Here, we don't just talk music. We welcome you into our heavy metal family. Join us for candid chats with legends and rising stars. We go beyond the typical interviews, exploring raw emotions and the life-altering impact of heavy metal. So whether you're a diehard metalhead or just curious, join our family and let the headbanging begin with the Brutally Delicious podcast.
What's up, everybody? I am Finn McKenty, host of the Punk Rock NBA podcast, part of the Sound Talent Media podcast network. My podcast is all about doing what you love for a living, and every week I sit down and talk to people who have done exactly that. For example, musicians like Tommy from Between the Buried and Me, Matt from Periphery, Lil Lotus and Shinigami, among many others, photographers, artists, designers, YouTubers like Glenn Fricker and Sarah Dici, and I unpack exactly how they got to where they are today with the goal of helping you do the same. So if that sounds cool, you can listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com, and I'll see you there.
So Chris, when we were doing our episode on Martika, we found some information that she was part of this Mr. T Be Somebody or Be Somebody's Fool. And I have watched this full special multiple times in my life. This was a discovery in college that I would like constantly show people because I think it is so fucking weird. But I'm pretty sure this was your first time watching it from front to back. You just knew the Treat Your Mother Right song, right?
Yeah. And I want to start by saying that I love this. This is like an 80s fever dream on acid. This thing is wild.
And it's a roller coaster of good and bad segments. Like there's segments that are so good, and then it'll be like the longest 5-minute bullshit segment you've ever seen.
Dude, yeah. I got to start by saying I love that New Edition is in it.
I have in all caps, oh shit, is that New Edition?
Yeah. I love the scene that they show up in, which is a peer pressure scene where it wasn't just peer pressure. It was a kid found some cigarettes and a Budweiser in a garbage can by the ocean. And then the kids are all drinking Bud and smoking cigarettes. And there's one kid in a half shirt who doesn't want to. And they are literally like shoving the cigarettes in his mouth, and Mr. T is standing about 3 feet away just shaking his head.
No, don't you do that. Don't you do. Well, I mean, then there's the additional symbolism of that video is shot on a pier for the peer pressure.
Oh, okay, right, yeah. Really on the nose. Matt, I gotta say, back up a second. Mr. T rules.
Mr. T is awesome.
He is so awesome. I learned so many things about him. The first thing was just this past week, you know, people have some terrible takes out there in the world, but I really loved that Mr. T took the time to tweet and say like, hey, I got my second booster shot. Everybody go out there and get vaccinated. I'm like, hell yeah, Mr. T. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Encouraging. I don't know. I didn't know that Mr. T would be the voice of reason, but we need Mr. T right now. I learned that Mr. T was the youngest of 12 children. He had 4 sisters and 7 brothers. In 1970, he officially changed his name to T from Lawrence Turod, I guess is how you pronounced it. His quote about it, which I loved, is he said, I think about my father being called Boy, my uncle being called Boy, my brother coming back from Vietnam and being called Boy. So I questioned myself, what does a black man have to do before he's given respect as a man? So when I was 18 years old, when I was old enough to fight and die for my country, old enough to drink, old enough to vote, I said I was old enough to be called a man. I I self-ordained myself Mr. T, so the first word out of anybody's mouth is Mr. And I thought that was so badass.
So I want to tell you a quick fact, and this comes from me being a wrestling fan, but the most famous segment on this is the Treat Your Mother Right segment,
of course.
which we'll get to. I mean, if you've only seen one segment from this, it's almost definitely that segment. There is no joke in that Mr. T loves his mom. And so much so that in 2014, he was part of the WWE Hall of Fame induction team. And he gave a 30-minute long speech, which had to be cut short because he was going over his time, where he used the word mother 74 times because the entire speech was about how he wouldn't be there if not for the love and support of his mom, and how hard it is for a single mom, and how he's always respected his mom. Like, he spent 30 minutes on the biggest stage that he could be on in 2014 just talking about how much he loved his mother. I love that about Mr. T.
That is
so
amazing.
Much.
I actually think that Treat Your Mother Right is a good song. Like,
it is.
I actually really like that song. It's ridiculous. I always send it to my mom on Mother's Day, of course. Why wouldn't you? Mother, there is no other like mother, so treat her right. I just love
the rapping. M is for the moan and the horrible groan.
yeah. He very much gets into the actual birth that a mother has to endure. I got to respect him for that. Continuing with the Mr. T story, man. This story is amazing. Mr. T went to the Army, and then after the Army, he tried out for the Packers. He didn't make it because of a knee injury. He then became a bouncer and then a bodyguard, and he was a bodyguard for the following people: Steve McQueen, Michael Jackson, LeVar Burton, Diana Ross, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, and Leon Spinks. I love that he was a bodyguard for LeVar Burton and also Muhammad Ali.
Yeah. So, fun fact also, just because I don't know when I'll ever get to bring this up, you mentioned Joe Frazier as well, Philadelphia's own Joe Frazier. My uncle's cover band was Joe Frazier's backup band.
Wow.
When Joe Frazier would do live shows, he would hire my uncle and his band. So I have no memory of this because I was very young, but Joe Frazier used to come over my grandfather's house for parties. And I probably spent many, many a time sitting with Joe Frazier when I was like 6 or 7, having no clue who he was.
Wow. That's pretty crazy, man.
Yeah. One of the greatest boxers of all time, Joe Frazier.
Yeah. Hey, Mr. T's late 20s, he won 2 consecutive Tough Man competitions, which is where I believe he caught the eye of Sylvester Stallone to get the role as Clubber Lang in Rocky III, which was supposed to be just a few lines.
Yeah.
But it became a much bigger role, I think, largely in part to maybe it was an improv line, but his very famous quote, "I pity the fool."
Yeah. Also, I'll just say that is my favorite Rocky movie. I'm not big on the Rocky movies, but I love Rocky 3.
Okay. Rocky 4 seems to be a popular one, but
yeah.
you're a Rocky 3 guy. I respect that.
Yeah.
But let's talk about Be Somebody or Be Somebody's Fool.
First note,
so much to talk about here.
First note, such a long introduction song. This opening song is like 4 minutes long.
First note, this thing is 51 minutes long. the entire special. Along the way on this special, he teaches kids to understand and appreciate their origins, how to dress fashionably without buying designer labels, how to make tripping look like breakdancing, how to control your anger, how to deal with peer pressure, how to treat your mother. Just everything you can imagine happens in this special, and it's mind-blowing. It's wild.
So let's try to go at least semi in the order of how things go.
Okay.
In this, we're going to be jumping all over the place for sure. But like I said, opening intro song, damn near 4.5 minutes long. It is a long Be Somebody or Be Somebody's Fool. And then we get this very short sketch about shyness, which I actually think is a pretty funny, like, SNL could do the premise of a shy person doing a public service announcement about shyness and getting yelled at for not talking loudly enough. And that little girl has a massive career right now as a voice actress. Like,
wow.
She's done like all of the biggest anime. She does video games. She only ever appeared in one movie film, and it's one of my favorites, the 80s film Night of the Comet. If you ever saw the 80s film Night of the Comet, where it's like two valley girls, it's the end of the world happens. A meteorite flies over California, and anybody who looked at the meteorite just evaporates to dust. People who were outside when the meteorite flew over turn into zombies. But like, if you were indoors and didn't see the comet at all, you're perfectly fine. And it's about two girls who were like spending the night inside the mall, and they come out and it's just a full blown apocalypse, except for like them and like 5 other survivors.
Gotcha.
It's a goofy one, but yes, this little girl is one of the few survivors in the movie.
Well, one of my favorite parts about this shyness segment is that when Mr. T is talking about, I guess, just convincing kids not to be shy, I love the one quote I wrote down is, "You know me. Of course you do. I'm famous." Which I thought was an amazing quote, which there's just nonstop quotes in this thing.
Oh, I've got at least 4 that need to be mentioned,
Yeah.
but we'll get there.
Yeah,
I love the
continue.
roots. Then we go into the story of your roots, knowing your roots, which I think that the song is complete trash that comes up in this segment, but I was actually like kind of touched by Mr. T explaining stuff that we've made fun of probably our entire lives about, like his shoes and his hair and his gold chains. But then he's explaining why he wears those and how they remind him of like where he comes from. And I'm like, God damn, Mr. T, why are you so fucking cool? Like,
I know. I mean, I'll tell you, I want to talk about his gold for a second. First of all, in this video, I don't remember Mr. T wearing this much gold. He seriously looks like he's wearing 80 pounds of gold around his neck. It is so many chains. It is insane.
Yeah, no, this has to be peak chain wearing Mr. T, because I agree with you. I always remember him having like a couple, maybe like 5 or 6. There's
Dude.
like 40 pieces of chain around his neck.
Hey, Matt, did you know that he stopped wearing his gold after helping with the cleanup of Hurricane Katrina in 2005?
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, I'm not going to wear this gold anymore. This isn't cool. I mean,
I love that.
Once again, Mr. T, I'm trying to dig up something bad about Mr. T. The only bad thing I could find about Mr. T is apparently at some point, Mr. T went on a oak tree rampage. Did you happen to read about this?
No. What was the oak tree rampage?
People were outraged. He like chainsawed down like 100 oak trees. But I think that they were on his own property. I don't know the full story of this. This is the only like even remotely bad thing I could find out about Mr. T, is that he chopped down a bunch of trees at some point.
Ready for a head-bangingly good time? Dive into the world of heavy metal with the Brutally Delicious podcast. Here, we don't just talk music. We welcome you into our heavy metal family. Join us for candid chats with legends and rising stars. We go beyond the typical interviews, exploring raw emotions and the life-altering impact of heavy metal. So whether you're a diehard metalhead or just curious, join our family and let the headbanging begin with the Brutally Delicious podcast.
Hi, this is Krista Makes, host of Krista Makes a Podcast. The theme of the podcast is songwriting. Each week, my musical guest picks a defining song from their career to discuss, critique, and analyze during the show. So please join me for some fun and insight into some of the greatest songs ever written and recorded. Listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com.